My topic was going to be something more on helping the poor, but when I spoke to Liz, she said, you're reading through the book, I guess, The Four Signs of a Dynamic Catholic, which gave me
You had the book.
And I had the book, and it gave me the incentive to go read it. So I did read the introduction because I wanted to get an idea of what the content was. And then Liz asked me to focus on the chapter about generosity. So, and I hope to probably learn from you about generosity as much as, my giving you a presentation about my thoughts about generosity. So, I guess this is the third sign of four signs of a dynamic Catholic. And first thing I said, what is a dynamic Catholic? And I said to myself, well, I know about statics in my engineering program and dynamics. They're two different things. Then in reading the introduction, when Matthew Kelly remarked from his research that only 7% of Catholics are dynamic, I said, first reaction was, the Catholic Church as an organization must be doing a very poor job of holding its Catholic population together. And then on top of that, seeing the other statistic about the 7% actually do and contribute 80% of what's going on in the Catholic Church. That was even more astounding. In any event, as far as all of that, I also said to myself, blaming the Catholic Church as an organization is an easy out, but I think it's up to us as individual Catholics to help build up the community, to help build up the Catholic Church and the faith. So, in this regard, I'll proceed with this topic for today, generosity. So I actually wrote this first and said, what is generosity? In my head, I came up with freely giving of self with no expectation of return. And in a way, I see that as faith with works. I remember, I believe one of the saints, probably Thomas Aquinas, if I recall, used to say, faith without works is a dead faith. Or no faith at all, really. So I see the works part of it, as one expression of generosity. And by the way, after I wrote freely giving of self with no expectation of return, and I looked it up in the dictionary, and that was what it was. So here are my thoughts about generosity. And three categories. I think in Matthew Kelly's book, he talks about generosity to others, which is what we think of first when we say generosity. But then he also spoke about generosity to God. And then I added, how about generosity to oneself? So in those three categories, for others, we think of monetary. The easy thing is to open your checkbook, write an amount, and mail it to the Red Cross, for example. Others give donations in kind, possessions that that either are excess or surplus. Others do in-service work, service to others. I can think of our Eucharistic ministers who go to homes and nursing homes. Others volunteer. Seeing Eye, one of my friends volunteers at the Seeing Eye. So we give to others, and that's one expression of generosity. So the monetary is the first thing that comes to my head. Write a check, give a donation. But there are many other types that doesn't involve money. To God. Now, Matthew Kelly mentioned worship, which is daily Mass, for example, or at least Sunday Mass, and prayer in various forms. So I thought that was, didn't think of it as generosity, but certainly generosity to God, giving to God what was due to God. And then I said, I think one thing I would also add is, what about myself? Not necessarily being generous monetarily or possession-wise to myself, but we do have, I think, a responsibility to take care of ourselves. So I wrote down personal well-being, the physical, the mental, and the emotional, and the spiritual. If we are not healthy ourselves, I think the other two categories, we're not in a good position to do any good there because we're concerned about our own health. So I think it is important to maintain a personal well-being, and personal happiness and joy, I think, come along with all of that. So hopefully you follow that train of thought. Okay, so I come over and said, well, what are, instead of obligations of opportunity, I kind of said, let's look at it as opportunities, which is a much more positive way rather than saying an obligation. And some areas that I'm aware of, certainly our church ministries, all of them. And what jumps out at me on the weekly bulletin is what the Samaritans are doing. And I'm sure we have a lot of overlap. There are probably some, obviously, Samaritans in the faith. Is that correct? Okay, so we have overlap here. So, and I get myself involved with the Rosary Prayer Group on Mondays. Then I slide over to the choir practice right after that, which makes it one trip to the church and 2 ministries. Reviewing all of this, I have been a lector, and I have, shamefully said, I have been taking a little breather from that. And I kind of reminded myself saying, well, there's one last mass on Sundays, maybe they don't need me, but I have to perhaps not take the passive or the static route and go and volunteer if I'm needed there. So this little speech this morning kind of prompted me to kind of wake myself up as well. So I'm learning about generosity even as I speak about generosity. Now I'm also involved with a charity, the Mary Queen of All Nations Alliance, Missionary Alliance, which helps the poor internationally, and by even giving of things in kind, monetary donations as well. I know some of you have attended an anniversary dinner back in December at the, I think it was Rod's, the Madison Hotel, right? So you may be aware of this particular charity, among others. I got involved with it accidentally. I wasn't aware of it, but some friends here kind of gave me a little push in this direction. And what I found here is that it's a small group. Actually, Delia's sister, Merla Rica Franca, was the founder, as some of you may know, and has been doing this work for 30 some odd years. What I have found is, what attracted me to stay with the Alliance is the fact that if we help an organization, usually it's overseas in India, the Philippines, South America, this particular group always asks for a report of what was done. And my obligation to the group is, once we find out what has been reported in terms of the effectiveness of our contributions, we report it back to the benefactors so they get a sense to see what their contribution, monetary or otherwise, has done for a particular group, which to me makes it more alive than, say, writing a check and then donating to the Red Cross and never seeing whatever happened again. So that's why I've continued to be active with the MQAN, is how I abbreviate that. And then another resource is the MHMC, which stands for the Mental Health Association of Morris County. I don't know if anyone has heard of that organization. Okay, it's a very quiet organization. They are headquartered in Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. And one of my friends who sings with me in the Masterwork Chorus, another group that I belong to, got involved with this agency through his church over in Mountain Lakes as well, and has developed a network, a help network. And I got the wrong impression. So he said, my friend told me and said, I sent you an introductory letter of this group. You didn't read it, obviously, so I said, yeah, you're correct. So after reading what the letter had said is that my friend Don had, through his church, contacted the Mental Health Association, also of Mountain Lakes Church, to a Mountain Lakes organization, which helps the people with mental issues. Now what it is a network of, in the area of churches, mosques, and synagogues that stand by and are ready to help whenever the organization needs particular assistance, be it counseling, be it feeding someone that's homeless or providing some housing. A caseworker will refer to this network on a rotational basis to see if one of the churches can come to a particular person's assistance. And what he had asked me is, we are not part of that network as of yet, but I'm going to try to approach perhaps. My feeling is maybe the Samaritan group might be the right place to pitch that, some of this information. And so there is a caseworker at the Mental Health Association that can call on this network for help. So that's just to give you some idea of what's available or the opportunities for expressing generosity within our own area. Okay. And then I thought I'd throw some video pictures, and I think Delia supplied me with some historical shots of the parish in past years. Here's a crop walk, and I remember the crop walk from our church to St. Matthew's going to Randolph. So one expression of generosity in our past. And here's one that I'm receiving generosity. Back in 2011, I was away in China, and my friend who watched the house for me said my basement became flooded, pretty badly actually. And another friend from another parish, Notre Dame, said they have an action group that specializes in helping people with flooding in their homes. So they mobilized, and they descended on my house after I returned from home back to New Jersey, and in one morning came with maybe 15 people and cleared out all of the debris out of my basement. Okay, so I could not have done this by myself. And here's part of the team. You'll notice that they're carrying out debris. They took down all of the wall paneling, back to the stud work, took out the flooring and all of that. And I was certainly, I said, eternally grateful. They didn't ask for anything other than I certainly fed them lunch for their efforts. And they even came back and with bleach, sanitized the basement against mold. So incredible. And this is from another parish, not Resurrection, by the way. So, so receiving generosity and giving generosity, I think, works both ways. Okay, this is a picture that I did show back in December. This was a church in Uganda, and they had asked Mary, Queen of all Nations, for assistance. They here they are in the rain under some tattered tarps and attending mass out in the open. Now the brick wall in the back there is the partially constructed church with an outer roof, and they had asked Mary, Queen of all Nations, if they could help with the construction of a roof, so that at least they would have something that would keep them out of the rain in bad weather. And I'm happy to say the status of that is we have given them enough money so that they can put the roof on, and I'm now waiting for them to supply us with a report and pictures showing the church with the roof completed. So we did help them through that request. And I'll give you the more details of that is when I presented this in December at the anniversary dinner, one of the parishes came through. It is the Assumption Men's Group, Assumption Parish in Morristown, and said, I think our men's group can come around and give you the donation that you need. And so by early January, we had requested $2,000, which I then passed back to the parish priest in Uganda. And as of last week, he wrote that we are now finishing the roof, and he hopes to have pictures and a report to us within the week, so that I'll in turn show that back to the Assumption men. of what they did and how their money helped. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some things that are looking for help as an opportunity. This is also in Uganda, and I wrote to it was the same pastor, and this little ragged tent, I was told, is the nursery for the children where I guess they have care while the adults attend Mass. And I looked at that and I said, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, but if that's a nursery, or supposed to be a nursery, it's pretty ragged. So they had also made a request that we could help them with some kind of a nursery facility that's more permanent than a tent. Okay, and this is another request. This is from the Philippines. I believe it's from Palawan. Did I get that right?
Palawan.
Palawan, okay. And I think that's one of the islands in the Philippines. This community and this request was for artesian wells. And as I read the description, okay, the pastor wrote and said, this area of can you pronounce that? Ilue? Is that how it goes? Ilulue, I guess. Most of it is rice fields, and this community gets most of their water, or almost all of their water, from just picking it out of streams and rivers. So there is no running water in this area. And they had made a request that we could help them with drilling for artesian wells so that this and several other communities in the area could have running water. Okay, so I was given a list of things that you have done in the past, so I wanted to just kind of review that with you so that you remember what good you have done to the community. I believe, and I was aware of a great deal of effort for disaster relief from the victims of Typhoon Haiyan, I think about 2 years ago. And Delia reminded me that your ministry also assists with Sister Ann, and I remember Sister Pat, and had a ministry somewhere in Missouri, down south, I believe, helping the poor or helping the needy down in there. Certainly clothing, school supplies, toy drives. I walk into church and I have seen piles and piles in the hallways and then sorted out here in our community room. Emotional and physical support, as I wasn't aware of what the Women of Faith, helped members who are ill and deceased members and families of deceased members. And certainly, I know that there's a lot of overlap with the other ministries at Resurrection. So, I will end with a little bit of a thank you, Women of Faith, for all the contributions that you have made to the parish. And I certainly want to say, certainly keep up the good work, and you deserve a hand for what you do. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Good afternoon, George.